Hi, and welcome to part 5 of our tap block project video. And today we're going to be jig pointing holes. In other words, we're going to be positioning the center holes on the project using coordinates on the milling machine. And we're doing that on the oversized blocks. Remember that in our part 4 video, we'd seen how to center drill the positions of all the holes using a layout, a punch, and a die, not punch and a die, but layout, punch, and drill press. Today we're doing it in a little more accurate fashion, although the tolerance doesn't require it, but it's good to see how to do it. With the milling machine on for the 5 blocks that are 10 thousandths oversized, the ones that are going to be finished by grinding. And that means that I'm going to be using this edge finder to find the edge of my part, and then I'm going to move 5 thousandths over to compensate for the extra material that I left on each side, 5 thousandths on each side of the part. And then I'm going to set my 0, and that way I'll be able to move to my coordinates without always adding on 5 thousandths. I'll just add it on to the 0 at the very start. And I'm going to start by setting my 0 in X, and that'll position me nicely to be able to find my 0 in Y. Because the Y coordinates, I have 3 movements to do, and I'll never be backing up. I'm going to set it second, and then I won't have to mark my table and all that. My X coordinates, however, I'm going to be coming backwards, forwards, backwards. I'm going to have to come back. So that means that I'm going to have to mark my table with a piece of chalk so that I can come back to my original 0 when I back up because of the backlash in the lead screws here. So let's take a look at edge finding. And once we're over our first coordinate, well, we'll set up our number 2 center drill and we'll start drilling that hole. But before we start, don't forget your safety glasses. So the edge finder has offset. Now I'm going to set my collar to 0, and I'm going to move 100 thou. Well, it's best if we move in the right direction. So 100 thou for half of the end of the edge finder, plus my 5 thousandths of an inch for the oversized part. And that's my 0 in X. The first hole that we want to center drill here is hole E, and hole E is situated at 180 thousandths of an inch in the x-axis. And remember, I don't have to add the 5 thou oversize on the surface because I took that into account when I set my 0. So I want to set my x to 180 thou. So 1 full turn is 100 thousandths of an inch, plus 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 180 thousandths of an inch. There you go. Remember, we're going to be moving back and forth in X, so don't forget to mark your 0. And then we start the whole process over again, but this time in the Y-axis. So we move forward until we get the edge finder to offset, and we can retract it. Now we can set our collar to 0 and continue moving forward 100 thousandths of an inch for half the diameter of the edge finder, plus my 5 thousandths of an inch oversize. There you go. That's the 0 in Y. The first hole I want to drill, hole E, is in Y as it was in X. So in Y, it's at 180 thousandths of an inch. And remember, I've already allowed for the oversized part, so I'm really going here to 180 thousandths of an inch. I mustn't forget to reset my 0 since I didn't do it when I found the edge in Y. So there, my collar is reset to 0 here, and now I can go to my Y dimension or position, which was 180 thou. So 1 full turn for 100 thou, and then slowly we'll creep up on 80 thousandths of an inch, and that'll give us our 180, and there you go, we're good to drill. So we're at X 180 thou and Y 180 thou. And since I've added the 5 thou over dimension on each reference at the start, well, I don't have to take it into consideration for any of the other holes to come. So I should be right over where I want to be. But remember, we performed a safety layout on this surface. We laid out our lines to indicate where the hole should be to save us from a fatal mistake like miscounting a turn or not taking into account half the width of the edge finder or something of that sort. So let's get our number 2 center drill into the chuck here, and then we can just come and touch the part with the end in rotation to see if our precision concurs with the laid out lines that we produced earlier. So my safety layout tells me that I am where I want to be. And the graduated colors on my axis will tell me that I'm there very accurately. So now's the time to center drill that hole. Okay, so that was our first hole. Now we're going to move on to the second hole, obviously. But which one? Now remember at the start I mentioned that I didn't want to have to back up in Y because I didn't want to have to mark my axis. We're only going to move forward. And that means that logically the next hole that is in the Y axis, the same as the one that I've just done, well, is the hole A. And note that I didn't say the A hole. It's hole A because it's on the same Y coordinate. I don't have to move it. So all I have to do here is move my X coordinate. Now, I'm not going to reset my collar to 0. I'm going to progress and stay. I don't want to lose what I set up. So I have to remember I was at 180. I want to go to 560 for the A hole in X. So to get to 560, I was at 180. I'm going to move 20 graduations, which will bring me to the next 0, which is actually 200, and then I'm going to move 3 full turns, 300 thou more, plus 60 divisions for 360 thou more, then the 200, and that'll give me my 560. So let's go there. So I'm at Y 180 thou and X 560. But am I really? Well, that's why I have a safety layout. So I'm going to turn on the rotation. I'm going to come and just touch off, verifying that I am where I want to be with my safety layout, and then drill the hole. The next hole that I'm going to do, if I want to maintain only a forward progression in the y-axis, well, it's going to have to be hole D. So I'm going to have to drill the hole. And that being said, I'm going to progress from where I am in Y, which is 180 thou. I'm not going to reset my color to 0. I don't want to lose where I am. So I'm at 180 in Y, and I want to get to hole D, which is at 310 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to move 20 thou from where I am. That's going to bring me to 200, and then one full turn plus 10 lines, and that'll get me to 310 thousandths of an inch in Y. So I'm at 180 thousandths. Now I'm at 200. One full turn later, I'm at 300 thousandths of an inch, and 10 more is 310 thousandths of an inch in Y. So my Y coordinate is set for the hole D, but not my X. And my X coordinate is going to give me a little trouble, because to get there, I'm going to have to back up. And I have some play in my lead screw, and that's going to cause me a problem. So that is why we marked the table here. So to get around the backlash problem, I'm going to return to my original 0. So in this case, I'm going to back up until the chalk lines align, and then I'm going to back up half a turn more. Then I'll come forward, eliminating the backlash until I get to the next 0. When I get there, I'm going to confer by looking at this chalk line that the chalk line aligns. So I'll be on 0, moving forward, and the lines will align. That will be my original 0. And from there, I should say, I'm just going to move forward some more until I get to my coordinate for the D hole, which in this case in X is 370 thou. So let's do that. So I back up in my x-axis till I align the chalk lines, and then I'm going to go about a half turn further, and then I'm going to come back to the first 0 I meet, and there you go. That's my original 0, and I can see that my chalk lines align. So now I can move on to my x coordinate for the D hole, and it's 370. So 1, 2, 3 full turns at 300 plus 70 thousandths of an inch, and I'll be on my X 370 thousandths of an inch. And there you go. We ran through this quite abruptly, or quickly I should say, because all of this has been covered in great detail in other videos that I've produced. Here's a list of those videos that will help you understand what just happened a little more in detail. This little quickie is all about positioning holes when you don't have a readout. And this video describes the same process but with a DRO. This one describes several techniques for edge finding. All my videos are free, and they can be found on my webpage, THATLAZYMACHINIST.com. A lot of people are going to say, well, this is a very long and drawn out affair. But in reality, I'm explaining it all at the same time, but it really doesn't take that much time. So I have my block set up for the 2 last center drill holes, and I've mounted here my edge finder. So let's take a look in real time at the edge finding in X and Y, setting my zeros, setting up my center drill, and drilling those 2 holes in real time, and we'll get a feel for how much time it takes once we get the hang of this. And there you go. The 2 holes are done, and it really didn't take that much time. I'd also like to add, before we move on to the final drilling, that we didn't follow the prescribed order for drilling the holes when we produced these center holes. And that's because the order we determined earlier on in one of the other videos, well, really applied only to the drilling of the finished holes, not to the center drilling. Okay, well, where are we with this project? Well, we're at the point where I have 10 small blocks that are all nice and squared up. And 2 of those 10 blocks have center drilled holes in them. Now 2 of them have center drilled holes in them because my 10 blocks are divided up into 2 sets of 5. 5 blocks size per size, 5 blocks oversized for grinding. Now what do I want to do? Well, I want to drill some holes. Now if I use this center drilled block and come and drill my 7 holes, I'm going to have to change the tool 7 times. And then if I center drill and drill this one, I'm going to be changing the tools many more times because the other blocks aren't center drilled yet. It would be a lot simpler to reduce the number of tool changes if I center drilled all my center drill holes at the same time without changing the tool, and did the same then for the other sizes of drills. So that's what I'm going to do. And what exactly do I have here? So I have my shop air at the back here installed in a small V-block and clamped to the table, and this will permit quick cleaning of the jig while I'm using it. I have a parallel clamp here, a small one, clamped to the jaw of the vise and positioned slightly at an angle to give me a single point of touch off here that will help position my block. I have 2 clamps, okay, really vice grip type clamp here that's bolted to the table, and a finger clamp in back here that's mounted with springs so that I can loosen and tighten here without having to play around with the clamp. And inside the vise here I have a small center thread gauge, thread centering gauge I should say. I needed a very thin parallel, and I'm using that as a thin parallel. Why do I need a thin parallel? Well, I'm going to be eventually drilling through these parts, especially the 1/4 inch and slightly larger hole on this side. I don't want to be drilling into my parallel, so I have a very thin parallel here. And this is a jig that I'm going to use to accelerate the center drilling and eventually all the drilling of the holes. To use this jig, we're going to install our part lettering upright and to the back. I'm just saying that because we have to know how to orient all the parts here. And you can see that I'm just sliding it in up against this clamp to position it, and then just a half turn here to tighten it down. Now that holds my part in the vise. Great, but now I want to position for center drilling a hole. So let's come up to this center hole here, and I'm going to start, turn off, and come down, clamp, clamp, and now I am positioned for center drilling. But this block already has its holes center drilled, so I'm not going to center drill them again. But I have used the position of those center drills, or this center drilled hole, to position this hole set up properly for my 4 next blocks. So I'm going to pull that center drill block from the vise. I'm going to swap this hardened center for a number 2 center drill, and then I'm going to center drill the 4 other parts one after the other. Well, you can see where this is going. So I'm going to carry on with the positioning and center drilling of all the other center drilled holes in these parts. And there, all the positions have been center drilled. Now that I've done those center holes, I'm going to basically start over the exact same operation on the same parts, because this time I'm going to use my hardened center to position my reference block, each one hole at a time. Once I'm positioned with my center over a specific hole, well, instead of swapping the center for a center drill, I'm going to swap the center for the final drill size required for that specific hole. And I'm going to drill the 5 blocks. Then I'll move on to the next hole, and so on and so forth. And remember, the order here is crucial. I'm going to start with hole D. So there, hole D is complete on all our 5 blocks. Now I have to set my center back up, quickly find my next position, get the next size drill, and carry on. So remember, it's important to follow the proper order from now on. So I'm going to go through all this drilling quickly. We don't have to video all this, it's just repetitive. And we'll see you once the drilling is completed. If you want to learn more about positioning parts in jigs and fixtures, well, this little quickie might interest you. So there's our first set of 5 blocks. These are the oversized blocks. They've all been drilled, and quite important, they've all been lightly deburred. Now this first set of oversized blocks are the blocks that are going to be sent out to Brad Jacobs for heat treatment. He'd probably send them out to someone else for heat treatment and finishing a light grinding. And then eventually they should make their way to Keith Fenner. So these I will package up and send off in the next few days. But it's no time to tear my setup down, because I still have 5 size per size blocks to finish here. And that will be what we'll be doing next week. So I'll drill them now off camera, but next week we'll be heat treating and finishing those 5 blocks that aren't going to be sent off. So until then, have fun, be careful, and happy machining. There you go.